What I did earlier on, I tried to go back into history in late 1940s, 1949 to be exact. The Securities and Exchange Commission came out and said all research at Wall Street had to be rooted in sound fundamental principles. And that literally closed the door on technical analysis. In fact, it caused a lot of problems for John McGee, who wrote the Bible in technical analysis. And if you fast forward 55 years, guess what? Sarbanes-Oxley law come out, and that's where David fits in, because we had to direct our desires and needs to the regulators at that time. The date is Friday, December 17th, 2004, when we, along with our psychometrician and our lawyers, went in front of the, I think it was about 10 or 15 SEC, NASD, and New York Stock Exchange lawyers, and pleaded our case.
Right.
So I think David spoke, I'm pretty sure, at the history of technical analysis. And Barry here talked about the history of the CMT exam, and I try to pull it all together and talk about why they should be treated equally. We told them we wanted to be tested, but we wanted to be tested on a body of knowledge that is relevant to us. And fortunately, it worked. Several months later, it was March of 2005. Rule 344 was amended, and the law of the land now reads there are officially two analysts. One's a fundamentalist, follows companies, has a CFA, and the other one is a technician who follows stocks and has a CMT. Doesn't get any better than that, except you did something after that.
Well, actually, I guess it does get a little bit better than that, because we talked, Ralph used the term psychometrician. Psychometrics is just a field of psychology that says your exam has to measure what practitioners actually do. And the well-respected CFA Institute did their practice analysis, and what came back to them was that their practitioners are using technical analysis. So they had to include technical analysis in their exams, and I was fortunate to be one of the individuals they called on to author the curriculum on technical analysis. And for the last 3 years now, there's a chapter on CFA Level 1 exam, about a 75-page reading on the basics of technical analysis, and it presents it equally with fundamental analysis. And the CFA Institute gets about 100,000 students annually around the globe. They're in over 100 countries who have to take that exam, and they're all now learning the basics of technical analysis, and that technical analysis, as Ralph said, is one of two accepted fields of financial analysis.
And David's big part in all of this was his relationship with the, I would say, the bureaucracy.
The regulators. And the people who actually would approve these tests and would create the tests.
He knew how to deal through the shoals and the rocks. I got a little bumpy there for a while, but
well, that's when I had to calm you down.
Yes, I was getting a little nervous. They just didn't want to get involved. They figured they created the Series 86 and the 87 exam, and here we were going up and talking about an exam, and they thought we wanted them to create a new exam. We said, no, we have our own exam. And that's when the head guy said to me, if your exam was not psychometrically done, he said, you wouldn't be allowed in the elevator of this building. Right. I said, Ave Maria, thank God we outsourced the exam. From what I gather, the candidates taking the CMT now already have a CFA, many of them. So that's a switch, and I think it has a lot to do with the writings that you have.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's 110,000 individuals globally that carry the CFA designation. That's our target market. If you've taken the CFA designation, I still believe that the CFA designation gives you a wide, broad body of knowledge, but that the next most important thing to do is that specialization, the CMT. And there's a saying that the MTA has, that you need a CFA to get a job, but you need a CMT to keep your job. And I think that's very true. And the MTA and CMTs are now growing globally in places like India and China. I think that growth is going to explode. We're also growing. In the early days, in the 1970s of the MTA, it was only the 18 publishing sell-side technicians. Today, you have members of the MTA, CMT charter holders that are portfolio managers, that are traders, that are buy-side analysts, sell-side analysts. So technical analysis is pervading across the entire financial industry, to the benefit, I think, of the industry and to investors, because it will lead to a more efficient market for investors.
One of the things that Ralph and Barry and I have been involved in, many others, is on the universities and introducing technical analysis as a course with universities and colleges. And one of the things that I think the MTA is doing is trying to train the trainers, train the teachers, provide, using them as a vehicle to reach as many students as we can. Mm-hmm. And if we can get some of these academics to support technical analysis and then introduce courses on technical analysis, and we would be happy to provide them with a syllabus and direction and materials and speakers, then I think that's also a very important growth area for us.
David is absolutely right. We know there's a demand out there. We know how important it is. Now we got to get the people who actually touch these students educated, and we got to basically educate the educators, and that's our next big hurdle.
And the challenge is so everything else in the curriculum, in the finance curriculum in universities, is theoretical. Fundamental analysis is the theoretical value of a security. The one thing that's practical, the one body of knowledge that's practical, is technical analysis. So it's a bit of a sea change, and once the professors and then the students learn this, it's a refreshing sea change for them, but it's a bit of a learning curve for them to understand technicals, and that this applies to the market as it really exists, not as it may exist in theory in some textbook.
And my experience with that, Barry, also is that students want to hear from practitioners as much as they want to hear from theoreticians or academics. And having any one of us and other members of the MTA go out there and speak to them, that's so refreshing for them to hear from people who are actually doing the trading, or doing the analysis.
Real world experience. That's excellent. I like the idea that we had a fairly large audience, and I think many of these people were hearing it for the first time. Oh, CMT, and it's important and all, but going behind the scenes and talking to the people and understanding the struggle that we had, understanding what was needed, like psychometricians and lawyers, and and the commitment of people like David and Barry. I enjoyed that part of it. I think we opened up some eyes and ears.
I mean, that's right. I mean, I think technicians should be proud of the heritage they have. Our field goes back much further, centuries further, in fact, than fundamental analysis. Fundamental analysis is still a relatively new discipline. Technical analysis has a long and widely respected history, perhaps not the last couple of decades, but I think it's important that technicians understand the history, understand where we are in that history, and embrace it and support it as we grow, for our next several centuries of technical analysis.
And I'll finish by saying that the growth is still ahead of us. Mm-hmm. Our job was to create a strong foundation for the future growth of our industry and this discipline. And I think that's the future.
Absolutely.
And we have the momentum to do it.